Yeah, y'all, definitely not in my same spot, but I had to get some stuff situated. But there's no one here right now, so I'll just delete this part off the video. As we traverse back to the spot, cool, and we are here. We are here and we are live. What's up, what's up, what's up, y'all? Welcome to the podcast rundown. I am your host, Wize, the icn.dj, host of this channel. It's Friday, y'all. And I've been ready for Friday. Let's just say that. But yeah, this is the podcast rundown. On the podcast rundown, I basically talk about podcasts that, I felt were pretty interesting to me this week. I have a small list here. Last week, I actually asked people to submit. I didn't ask anyone to submit this week because, I don't know, this week a little bit different for me on live. I got some stuff going on personally, and yeah. So with that being said, I do want to jump into the podcast rundown, but before we get into that, make sure that you are subscribing to this channel. So let's actually set up our poll right now. Are you, mind you, as I'm typing this, are you subscribed? Very simple, yes or no question. Last time I was on here on Wednesday, I want to say we had 100% rate. So if you are not subscribed, don't mess up the streak. Just go onto the page, subscribe, pop right back over here for the live. In any event, so today for the podcast rundown again, I got some shows. I'm going to start here with Paging Dr. Shonda. So Paging Dr. Shonda is a Revolt podcast network podcast. A few weeks ago, she actually interviewed Keke Palmer. So one thing that she does for her podcast, I actually think is really cool, is that she will take snippets from the episode that's actually, pretty, were interesting or all the things. And she decides to like add those to her podcast feed. So what that does is it gives it, again, more opportunity for people to re-experience or discover a new episode. Gito Planet says, "Sup, Unk." That's actually pretty funny. Gito Planet also says, "Revolt was owned by Diddy." I'm so glad that you mentioned that because it was owned by Diddy, but now it's actually owned by the employees. So shout out to the employees that now own Revolt and Revolt Podcast Network. If you now popping in here, go down to the poll and decide. Let us know. Are you subscribed? Yes or no? If you're not subscribed, go and subscribe. Anyway, so shout out to Peyton Dr. Shonda. She did bring up again like those clips from Keke Palmer's episode. The episode clip that she actually chose to bring up was one about how being a parent transformed her creativity. So if you are a parent that is, still navigating that space of having the time to take care of your child and still be creative, that's definitely a clip I suggest you all listen to. So not only did she have that episode, those clips out, she also has an episode out called "What is Sexology" by a Christian sexologist named Brittany Broaddus. She's also a guest on that episode. So again, you can find Paging Dr. Shonda on Revolt Podcast Network. If you visit listen.revolt.tv, you will be able to find that podcast. Gito Planet says Zeus Network needs to be shut down. If Revolt is employee owned, that's cool. Yo, I'm not gonna hold you. I have never watched anything on the Zeus Network. I've heard mad people tell me that the Zeus Network needs to get shut down. I don't watch it. So to each his own. But yeah, Revolt is now employee owned. So people who are employees, not me, I'm a consultant, but people who are employees, they now have ownership and equity stake into the company. 8 says, Ayo, peace from New York. You heard? Big bags, dump truck type shit. Listen, so I'm from New York as well. I'm from Brooklyn. So what up? What borough are you from? Cool. So with that being said, moving on to the next podcast, which is, ironically speaking, a New York podcast. We're going to talk about Bag Fuel. So Bag Fuel had a guest on. His name is Elliot Ness. If you are unk like me, as Gito Planet said, you will know Elliot Ness from being a part of Making the Band, which was a television series a few years ago. Well, many years ago actually now on MTV, where Diddy basically went around and found like artists and stuff like that, whatever, and basically made them into a band. The first season of that, which is crazy, it was never ever a band. It was literally like 5 rappers, but in any event, and 1 singer. But in any event, they ended up having that Elliot Ness as that person. But since that whole period, since his experiences with Diddy, his experiences with making a band, leaving, because he did get signed to Bad Boy, so like leaving Bad Boy and all that, whatever. He talked about that on that episode alongside, like some Philly stuff, PNB Rock passed away a few years ago in LA at a Roscoe's, so he talked about that as well too. So definitely check that episode out. It is the podcast is called Bag Fuel, and they interviewed Elliot Ness on that. You can find that podcast on Revolt Podcast Network. Listen.revolt.tv is the domain name, but you can also just go to your favorite podcast platform. That's Apple Podcast, Spotify, or whatever it is, and just type in Bag Fuel. So 8 says Queens, Long Island, Bronx, stand up. We fucks with Brooklyn. New York, one big family. Facts. Yes, because I am from Brooklyn, so I appreciate you. I noticed you didn't put Staten Island on there. That's mad funny. Most people, like, if they leave off Staten Island, they add in Harlem or something like that. So you're funny. All right, so cool. Moving on to a podcast that's new to the Revolt Podcast Network, but also talks about something that's slightly different. It's called Can We Talk R&B? I know a lot of podcasters focus on like rappers and just like rap culture. I know hip hop is both rap and R&B. I'm looking at the comments and laughing, y'all chill. But Ian Vaughn, who is the host of this podcast, he actually focuses primarily on R&B. I think that's really cool. So with that being said, he interviewed Elle Varner on a recent episode. This episode went up 3 days ago. Elle Varner has been out for a while, but she took a little bit of a break. So essentially, she kind of came on the show to kind of talk about what her music journey was prior to and where she is now. Of course, like most artists, they talk about their current music, the present music that they had, not present, the music they had in the past, and then they talk about the present music they have coming out right now. So, of course, she has a new single out called Falling Up, and it talks about like the newfound freedom that she has in her music. So definitely want you all to take a look at that episode as well too. And the one thing I like about how Can We Talk R&B podcast, how they go through like their information with their podcast and their descriptions and stuff, they add chapters. So you can add chapters to your podcast so people can just jump from section to section. So like for me, I know enough about Elle Varner where I don't need to know like her background and her early influences. Maybe I just want to learn about, why she took a break from the music industry. Like what was it that caused that moment for her to say, nah, I need to take a step back, and I can use the chapters to find that. So let me read some of these comments here because y'all really are going in right now. So Gito Planet says, I always told folks, if you get big, don't sign with Diddy. But I said it for financial reasons back then. Yo, listen, again, to each his own. But yeah, signing with just everybody is not in the best interest. You definitely, if you're going to sign to somebody, you have to make sure that you're assigned to someone that's aligned with the goals that you are aligned with. And that goes beyond, I want to make money. I want to be the biggest artist. It's like, and actually I'm not even going to all that because we're talking about podcasts here today. 8 says, nah, we're not jacking Staten Island, but it's all love. It is all love. You're right. Judo Planet also says, I'm glad Drake is getting exiled. It's rightfully deserved. You know, I it's so weird because like I definitely I like Drake. You know, I like Drake music. Um, I don't like some of the things that he does, and that's how we are with with a lot of things. You know, so freaky ass he is 69 guy. What can I say? What can I say? 8 says, hey, yo, everyone like this live. ASAP, I appreciate y'all. I appreciate you for saying that. Again, if you were in this live for the first time, this is the podcast rundown every single Friday at noon. I jump on YouTube Live, not even IG. I just jump on YouTube Live and I go in and say, okay, cool. Let's talk about podcasts. Because a lot of people, they've heard the term podcast, like they know they homeboy, they homegirl that got a podcast. But there's some shows that's been out here actually like doing that work for a long time. Like really doing that work. There's a podcast called The Read. Very, very popular. The hosts are Crystals and Kid Fury. Been out for years. Years. Some people know about that show, some people don't. Actually, another question I want to ask y'all real quick. So a lot of people, they use Spotify. I don't. I use Tidal. But a lot of people use Spotify. So like who got their Spotify Wrapped already? And if you did, like, where were some of your favorite artists? Who was like your top like 3? Cool. So let me read some more comments before I jump into the next one. Gito Planet says, why is there so much degenerate themes in our music? Why the fuck is Sexy Red popular? Bro, I don't know, but bend that ass over. Let that you breathe. 8 says, New York City claimed Drake, East Coast mans. I mean, yes, but yes. Again, like, yo, I don't got nothing against Drake as an artist. I think he went up against a demon and got eviscerated. Judo Planet said it's on purpose, and I'm done docile. RIP Prodigy. I don't know why I said Prodigy. My God. I'm not saying that last part. You're crazy. Anyway, Dennis, Andre, and Fumia says something in a language that I cannot read. So let's first start with welcome to the podcast rundown. You can find out about trending podcasts here. Let me know what language that's in so that I can respond to you in an appropriate manner, because my friend, I actually do not know what language that is. I'm not even going to hold you. I don't know. Right now, 50% of the people who are in the live have said that they are subscribed, and 50% have said that they have not subscribed. Let's get that number up to 90%, y'all. Let's get that number 90%, y'all. If you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. We put out content every single day. Trust me. Cool. 8 says Drake put a lot of people on. 8 says took Kendrick on his tour. I mean, that's cool. That's cool. But Janet Jackson said it a long time ago. What have you done for me lately? Just because you put me on, that don't mean I'm supposed to, hold you down forever. If we have differences, we're going to have differences. And that's just that, Cool. So moving on to the next podcast, we are talking about Holding Court. So Holding Court is a podcast put together by Big Court, who actually back in the day was signed to No Limit. Y'all gotta know No Limit, man. I ain't gonna go through all that. Anyway, on this episode of the Holding Court podcast, Big Court talks to Tank. Now, Tank, legendary legendary R&B artist, but Tank goes into details, like real deal details about his career. And again, in this podcast, like, I didn't know him as much about Tank. Like I talked about El Varner in the last for the last show. I knew a little bit about her, but Tank is like a little bit before my time, kind of. Like I was still a young boy growing up while he was really like on his rise. So to get some of those backstories about him performing in 1998 and, when his song and his album peaked in the top 10 for Billboard 200, like I was in like 8th grade at that time. So none of those things really mattered to me at the time. So I really appreciate this this episode of Holding Court. Not to mention, if y'all didn't know, he joined a group called TGT. It's Tank, Genuine, Tyrese. And just imagine, yo, Genuine went viral about 3-4 times this year alone. Tyrese probably went viral about 3-4 times himself alone as well too this year. So you know, a group like that, you know, former or potential still sex symbols, yeah, they sell out arenas. So yes, definitely take a chance and an opportunity to listen to that episode of Holding Court. That episode came out 3 days ago. It's called Tank Talks: Growing Up in the Church. Tyrese, Genuine, Aaliyah, Jamie Foxx, and the new R&B. 8 is really on this Drake vibe. 8 says Ross is ungrateful. Drake gave him a lot of hits. Yo, I again, I feel you. Drake is cool. But yo, my guy. Rick Ross could have stood on his own 2 feet, and he did before Drake came out as well too. So, all right. So moving on to the next and last podcast that I have on my list here, a repeat highlight. We're gonna talk about Carisha, please. So normally I'm not like a repeat Carisha Please episode watcher. Like I like to watch for people that I like versus watching every single episode. But Carisha, Young Miami, she had my girl on there. She had Flo Milli. On there. So for me personally, I had to check out that episode, you know. And I recognize, even when I was seeing the clips online, I recognized that she wasn't pregnant at the time, so they probably recorded this, or at least she wasn't showing. So she probably recorded this like, you know, 2 months ago or so. Because if you do follow Flo Milli, she's like very pregnant now. Like you're not missing it at all. So on this episode, Flo Milli talks about her journey from Mobile, Alabama, because that's one of the things that always kind of stood out for me. Like she really from, like, no disrespect for the folks out in Mobile, but she's from nowhere, you know? So she popped from there and became a viral sensation during the pandemic. She talks about, you know, getting famous through social media, like her experience touring on Zoom, which is, of course, you know, special, and like how Beyonce influenced her approach to privacy in the industry, you know. So, you know, if you want to get some inside details to how she took that ride up, you know, definitely check that episode out. Carisha Please is available one more time on listen.revolt.tv, or is actually available on YouTube. And just to give y'all a little heads up, both Carisha and Flo Milli, fine. So that would be a good watch for YouTube, in my personal opinion. Cool. So Dennis Andre says America, then he says Pony. So I'm gonna let you sit there with those, friend, for a while. Someone just voted in the poll. Thank you so much again. I appreciate you for subscribing. If you are new to the channel, have not subscribed, new to the live, this is the podcast rundown. Make sure that you are letting us know in the poll whether you are subscribed or not. Right now we're at 67%. So 2 of 3 folks that have come in here are subscribed. Make sure that you're one of those. Cool. So 8 has said Drake been on top the game, deadass, on some unheard of type shit. 8 also said Drake made Kendrick relevant again. 8, I hate to have to disagree with my New York brethren. I really hate to have to do it right now. But to say that Drake had did something that was unheard of, yo, Michael Jackson did this, Jay-Z did this, like on top. Like people held that for a while. So I don't want to, you know, whitewash history here. To even say that Drake made Kendrick relevant again, like, I mean, I disagree. You know, I feel like everybody, I'm going to say it like this. So Drake is McDonald's. I'm gonna circle back to that comment because you're wild for that. I'm gonna have to snatch your New York card, the 5 boroughs card, because you're wilding. But Drake is like McDonald's. You know, he got something for everybody. You're not gonna pull up in McDonald's with your family and not find a item for every single person in your family. Very rare. Kendrick is like fine dining. Okay? Like, you'll go to a fine dining restaurant where they'll like take your jacket off your shoulders, you know? You'll go and sit down. They'll, bring a little napkin to put in your lap. Okay? When they bring you your food on a plate, the food gonna be like this big on a small little plate. But it's fine dining. People gonna spend thousands of dollars for that because it's quality, right? So this is a game of quality over quantity. And Drake went up against a Pulitzer Prize winner. That is a man with words, okay? With enough words. So that's that. 8 said Jay-Z, respectfully never. He also said Jay-Z is overrated. He know that. He said that in the song, I'd rather be overrated than underpaid. 8 also says New York ain't jacking Kendrick. 8 also says real talk. 8, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with you, brother, and I'm going to leave it at that. Cool. So with that being said, those are the podcasts that I have for the podcast rundown. Again, like I said, this is the podcast rundown. It happens every single Friday without a fail at noon Eastern Standard Time. Pull up to the podcast rundown. I'm going to talk about all the podcasts that I felt was really hitting this week. If you have shows that you want me to talk about when you join the live, you can either comment them. Most of these videos, most of my lives, especially the podcast rundown, I actually add those to the page itself. So if you also want to submit, throw a comment on there and say, hey, talk about my podcast, talk about this, drop a link so I can look at it, see if it's going to fit the tone for the next week, and we'll go from there. Cool. With that being said, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. This is Wize Grisette. I am the icn.dj. You all can find me on Twitter and Instagram at The Real Wize, W-I-Z-E, because I'm special like that. I'm internationally known on the microphone as Wiz, Wizzy, and Wize, and I'm going to catch you all on the next live.